All right, this is Boxing with the Truth. I am the Truth. Today is August 28th, 2015. And today we have with us not a boxer, but a screenwriter, Andrew LeMay. How you doing today, Andrew?
I'm doing great. I'm hanging in there. I just want to say thank you so much, John, for inviting me today to actually talk about the Ivan Drago script that I've recently written.
Well,
and I'm pretty excited, and I know a lot of other people are really excited about it because, Rocky IV was such a pivotal movie. You know, a lot of people looked at the Rocky franchise and they thought it couldn't get any better. But then when you hit Rocky IV, it actually broke all records. It hit over, I think it was made for $30 million, and it actually made over $300 million.
Wow. Okay, for the boxing fans that aren't familiar with what Andrew's talking about right now, Ivan Drago is actually a fictional boxer in the Rocky IV movie in 1985. He's the Russian character. He doesn't speak a lot of English in the movie. Actually, he only speaks English 4 times, I found out. And here's just a few little facts about him. He was Olympic gold medalist. His amateur record supposedly was either 100-0 or 101. He was an infantry captain in the Soviet Union. His nicknames were the Siberian Express, the Siberian Bull, and Death from Above. And his pro record actually supposedly is only 31-1 with 31 knockouts. Of course, obviously losing to Rocky, Sylvester Stallone's character. So he only has lost 1 fight in his pro career. And what you're basically doing is you're trying to you wrote a screen or script or whatever you guys call it for a movie called Drago, and you're trying to bring the character Ivan Drago back to life and explain to the people what has happened with him and his career since losing to Rocky, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so now have you contacted Dolph Lundgren, who actually plays Ivan Drago in the movie at all, or Sylvester Stallone, who plays Rocky?
Yes, I have contacted a lot of their representatives. And what happens is they have particular levels. They've got particular levels of people to contact. So I've contacted their representatives. It's very difficult to get through to them personally, especially if you don't live in Los Angeles. And so I actually live in Phoenix, Arizona. And so what happens is most of the actors and screenwriters and people out here, they'll commute to Los Angeles for business and for meetings and such. And so what happened, I guess mainly with Ivan Drago, if anybody remembers, he in Rocky IV, he actually kills Apollo Creed in the ring. And that's what kind of makes him this big bad guy, and that's what pulls Rocky out of retirement. Because at that point he was pretty much retired because if you remember, Apollo Creed was he was the main. I guess you wouldn't really call him an antagonist, but it was more of a. If you remember the Chuck Wepner Muhammad Ali fight, it was very similar to that. Rocky was where Chuck Wepner was the underdog and Apollo Creed or Rocky Balboa was the underdog, and you look at the similarities of that minus. Chuck Wepner losing in the last round. So, but then they go on to fight again have the rematch in the second Rocky, and then Mr. T plays Clubber Lang in the third one. And so after Clubber Lang, he kind of retires, and then that's in order to pull Rocky back into the boxing, they actually lose Apollo Creed. So.
Okay, so my question is for you, how did you get such involved in the Rocky movies and coming up with the fact that you wanted to write a script for an Ivan Drago movie?
Well, if you look at it right now, this year is the 30-year anniversary for Rocky IV. And that was actually the first Rocky movie that I'd ever seen. I was really young. I was probably about 7 or 8, and my friend brought me out to the movie. And if you remember the 80s, if you lived through there and you were in grade school or whatever, it was, we're right in the middle of the Reagan era. We're right in the middle of the, if you remember, Sting wrote a song, "If the Russians Love Their Children Too." There was the Cold. We were right in the middle of the height of the Cold War, and so here's Rocky, and it really put those two sides together. Russia against America, and for him to actually go over to Russia, it was really a pivotal point. I guess in the patriotic boxing genre, where you look at any boxing film after that, and a lot of them emulate the original Rocky. Like, I know Southpaw just came out, and it's more of a drama like the first Rocky was, rather than kind of like a political drama, because there was just so many different levels on it. And so I looked at that character of Ivan Drago, and I said to myself, this movie made a lot of money internationally. And so there had to be people over in Russia that were actually watching this movie and cheering for Ivan Drago, because, I mean, his record is awesome. It's a great record to have. He was in the military. He was fighting for his country, literally. And so to have him, to kind of look at his status, you would think, okay, this guy's got to do something afterwards. And the story in there is really rich, and so I really wanted to kind of go in there. And if you take a look at the actor that plays him, Dolph Lundgren, he's still in excellent shape. He's the same age. I think he's around in his 60s now, but like early 60s, late 50s. And so he's the same age as Sylvester Stallone was when he played Rocky Balboa and fought against Mason the Lion Dixon. Well, the funny thing about that is, you take a look at Antonio Tarver. Well, he's a professional boxer, as you know. He is actually going to be, he's trying right now to be the oldest heavyweight champion of the world. And he just had his draw fight, I believe, with Cunningham. And so he's trying to fight against Klitschko. And Klitschko is a huge guy. Klitschko's huge. He's big. And so looking at those two characters, I look at Ivan Drago, and I could totally see him wanting to fight the guy that beat Rocky.
Okay, now in your script, you actually have Mason Dixon. So have you reached out to Antonio Tarver to see if he possibly play him?
Right. Antonio Tarver personally tweeted to me, and if you look on my Twitter page, it's Andrew LeMay. He actually tweeted directly to me, and that's how him and I started a conversation. And so he got me in touch with his manager, and I sent out an early copy because I was pretty excited about the script itself, because originally it wasn't supposed to be about Ivan Drago, but because I originally wrote the script. If you remember, about a year ago, Cuba was in the news. And so, but at the same time, so I wrote the script, and then right afterwards, Russia invaded, I want to say they invaded another country over there. Anyhow, that's neither here nor there. And so they were in the news as well. And so I thought, okay, Russia, and then you've got, I thought about Ivan Drago, and I thought my original script called Communist Boxing Redemption Movie could absolutely play as part of, it could be rewritten to fit Ivan Drago and make it like a Rocky movie, because I guess the Apollo Creed's Son movie is coming out, I believe, November. It's coming out for Thanksgiving.
Yep, November 25th. I was going to touch on that. But I want to get to the script real quick so the boxing fans out there understand why you're trying to bring Ivan Drago back and talk about the script a little bit. Because I actually read a little piece of it, and I'm actually excited. So I really hope it comes out, because I really want to watch this. So can you tell me about so he basically goes back to Russia after losing to Rocky, and then that kind of takes up where your script starts, right?
Yeah, well, if you remember, my biggest thing was trying to remember. Okay, there's so much lore in the Rocky film, so you can't actually take the Ivan Drago character and have him continue to fight. You look at him, and so I'm thinking to myself, what's going to be the inciting incident that's going to make this into a different, something different, rather than just a boxing movie. And if you remember from Rocky IV, Ivan Drago, right in front of, he insults Mikhail Gorbachev in front of all of his military officers, all of the military in the ring, and then on live TV across all nations, by basically saying, I'm not fighting for Russia, I'm fighting for me. So and then he throws the official into the crowd, and so that's a direct insult to them. And not only does he insult them, but then he loses in Russia, in Russia to an American. And so I'm thinking, 1985 Russia, that's going to get him death. They're just going to, basically walk him out on the road and shoot him, But so I was trying to figure out, okay, what kind of an incident could I take to actually get Ivan Drago out of this situation? And so I had his brother as kind of an untouchable mafia. He's a mafia boss. And so since family is big in the mafia, and you can also, pretty much do your business when you're in jail. So what I have his brother pretty much turns himself in to Russian authorities and makes a deal, as long as they can be cellmates. And so rather than Mikhail Gorbachev and the administration pretty much putting Ivan Drago to death, they put him in jail. They lock him up for the insults and things along those lines. And so, and then they put his brother him and his brother in the cell together. Well, if you throw, a mob boss and, a huge guy like, Ivan Drago in the same place, it's only a matter of time before they can figure out how to take over the prison system. And so they're sent up to Siberia, and they learn the ins and outs of Siberian prison, and that's where he's been for the past 30 years. And so if you look at him, he's pretty much a diehard patriot, Ivan Drago. I mean, you talked about him being a captain, and you talked about him really going all out. I could see him as like G.I. Joe, but for Russia. You know what I mean? And so it starts off as most Rocky movies do, with the flashback, and it goes from that Rocky IV incident into into 30 years later. But it also starts. It's a very it's weird because it's like a boxing movie, but it's also like an underground fighting ring movie, because now you run into the problem. Okay, how do you take these two huge characters like Ivan Drago's brother, and Ivan Drago, that are now running this Siberian prison, and how do you get them out of that situation and get Ivan Drago back to America to actually have a boxing match? Because one thing that Sylvester Stallone, which was really pretty cool, one thing he learned from Rocky V, and if you remember, Rocky V was, do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, after Rocky V, since it bombed so bad, he basically, he recalled, a lot of people confessed to him saying, the reason the movie didn't work is because there was no big boxing match. You know what I mean? It was more of a street fight. And so I tried to take that lesson and get Ivan Drago back. Well, Rocky's well retired. And so, but I have it to where Mason Dixon and his management, they're basically saying, we need to make more money, and the only the only way we're going to be able to make more money is find a big celebrity. And so if you take a look at the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight, that was huge. I mean, people just went nuts over this fight. And I love watching that fight because even if you look, Manny Pacquiao, he fought hard. I don't care what anybody says. You know, he didn't get knocked out. He fought hard. You know, he threw a lot of punches, but Mayweather was just a better fighter. But I'm trying to think where I was.
You're talking about the big fight where Mason Dixon and Lundgren, they need to figure out, like you're saying, to make it a big fight because Mason Dixon has nobody left to fight.
Right. So he's this character that he's actually, if you remember from 2006, he wasn't this larger-than-life character. He was more of a young guy. And so what I tried to do is I tried to turn him into this really arrogant, cocky guy that, he's beating people up left and right. But very kind of similar to Rocky III. You know, in Rocky III, you've got Mickey Goldmill kind of talks, before he fights Clubber Lang, he pretty much tells it's a very demotivational speech. He's like, Clubber Lang's hungry, but you're not. You're civilized. And so you look at Mayweather, and Mayweather, he was, he's still hungry. He's still got that fire. Where Pacquiao seems a little bit more civilized, and since he's holding the government office in the Philippines. So that's just my little take on that. But
go ahead.
No, okay, you can go.
No, I was just going to say, so have you ever thought about taking the Mason Dixon character, like you said, he feels he's got nobody left to fight, kind of like Mayweather, so why not make a deal and reach out to the prison and go into the prison and have it be on pay-per-view and whatever, and have Mason Dixon go into the Siberian prison and fight Drago, or Ivan Drago.
That's exactly where I went. That's awesome. I'm glad you picked up on that. That you're very insightful. What I had though is I tried to use his brother a little bit more because his brother's it's kind of like he's like a mastermind.
Okay.
He's a really smart guy, and so what happens is he kind of manipulates the system and gets to a point because. There's a lot of the movie it's kind of I want to say a prison break kind of thing, but it's not really because the warden, he wants to take over his prison again. So it comes time to where he hires one of the mayors from actually the beginning, and that's kind of it's an earlier scene where the mayor comes and he's hired by the warden to actually take out Ivan Drago, because Ivan Drago is his brother's enforcer in the mob. So Ivan Drago pretty much beats anybody up in the prison that disagrees with his brother. And so in order for them to get to Ivan Drago's brother, they've got to take out Ivan Drago, so they bring in a big enforcer. And I really wanted Nikolai Valuev to play that enforcer. Do you know Nikolai Valuev?
Yep.
Oh, that guy's awesome. That guy, the thing about Nikolai Valuev that people don't realize is he's not just big, but he's also fast. I'm about as big as Sylvester Stallone. I'm not a very big guy, and so to see Nikolai Valuev in the ring, I was just like, I feel like that little kid, in like the playground, he's getting beaten up by a bully, and then you get the bigger guy on your side, and he beats up so like I'm just cheering for Nikolai Valuev, and I would love to see him fight Vladimir Klitschko, because Vladimir Klitschko, that guy's just crazy handsome, you know what I mean? Like, he's been boxing for this long and he looks that good, you know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy. but I would love to see those two fight. So I wanted somebody that was going to be able to make Dolph Lundgren, where Dolph Lundgren's like 6'5", and seeing Nikolai Valuev stand next to Evander Holyfield is just one of those things that you're like, wow. Or like, there's a picture on the internet where Nikolai Valuev's hitting Hayes in the stomach, and it's cool to look at that and see him. I really look at him as a hero. So what I did is I contacted Nikolai Valuev. I actually got through to him, and he's over in Russia. And so I talked to his handler, and I talked to him, and basically what happened was, unfortunately, he wants to see himself in more of a positive light. And so the enforcer role that I wrote for him, I wrote this specifically for him because I wanted somebody that would be. I mean, he knows boxing. He can actually do the coordinated stunts that it would take to have, Ivan Drago and him fight. But he wants to play more positive roles for his son. I'm a father, and I totally understand that. So I put out a secondary offer where I haven't heard back from him, where I would like him to play the Russian ambassador to the United States, because I'd love to have him in the film. And in that role, he's actually sits next to Rocky Balboa because Sylvester Stallone, because Rocky Balboa, the Russian government calls him in to help negotiate the fight between Mason Dixon and Ivan Drago. And so Ivan Drago gets out of prison, but instead of coming directly right over to America, he's got to go through this. He basically has to go through this underground fight because what happens is his brother negotiates with the warden and his people, saying, again, he saves his brother and gets Ivan Drago into this underground fight. And if Ivan Drago wins the underground fight, then they both go free. But if Ivan Drago loses the underground fight, then they're both executed.
All right. Well, I don't want you to give away the ending. I want these people to have to come on and watch it. I know you're thinking about putting the script out.
The big thing I want people to know is you have to tweet to Sylvester Stallone. You have to, if you want to see this movie made, because you think Ivan Drago is, he's in his 60s. Dolph Lundgren is in prime shape right now to play this character. And so if any of your listeners really want to see the rest of this actually made into a film, you've got to, tweet about it. You've got to tell people about it. You've got to, reach out to Sylvester Stallone, MGM, Chartoff at Winkler. Those are the guys, those are the decision makers that are going to be able to turn this into a film. And time is of the essence because, if in 2, 3, 4 years, he might be a little bit too old to play the role. You know what I mean?
So I'm curious. Okay, now we brought up the Creed movie that's actually coming out, and that's about Apollo Creed's son. And Apollo Creed is one of the characters in the Rocky movies as well. Have you ever thought about reaching out to the guy that just came out with Creed and see if he'd be interested in doing the Drago movie?
I have, but what happens is that's still a large unknown. You know what I mean? You look at what's going on with Creed, and a lot of people don't know exactly how that's going to go. Like originally, I wrote in Paulie Panino in a role to play alongside Rocky in the Drago script, but I guess Paulie's dead in the new Creed, so I rewrote it to where it was going to be Clubber Lang, and so Clubber Lang and Sylvester Stallone are hanging out rather than Paulie. But I don't know exactly where the Creed film is going to fit in, and they call it a universe now. You know what I mean? Because it really is a Rocky universe. I mean, I would love to write, what happened to Clubber Lang. Because you look at Mr. T, and he's a very religious man now. and you could totally write that into the Clubber Lang story, and and really kind of take him out, because you look at Rocky Balboa, and Spider Rico was one of the first guys that he fought, and if you were able to use Rocky Balboa's restaurant as a place where Clubber Lang could come into, kind of like Spider Rico does, you could really extend the life of the Rocky universe. If you go on to TotalRocky.com, there's also there's a script for Mickey Goldmill. He was Rocky Balboa's trainer. And in October, I plan on putting the whole Drago script up on TotalRocky.com as well. And so, if nothing happens with, and that's a big possibility. Who knows what MGM has planned, or how, because it becomes difficult. Sometimes it's hard just to get all the stars to align. But there's also the original script, which is called Communist Boxing Redemption Movie, which is an original, but it doesn't have the that's for sale, but it doesn't have the lore and the just everything that comes along with the Rocky franchise behind it.
No, we got to get the Ivan Drago script out there. we got to keep the Rocky franchise thing alive. Now that Creed's coming out, you got to get the Ivan Drago thing out. And like you said, the Clubber Lang, I was even going to bring that up as well. If somebody was interested in doing the Clubber Lang, we got to get all those characters out there and keep this whole Rocky thing alive. This thing made so many boxing fans, just this movie alone. And even if you talk to a lot of pro boxers that I interview, their favorite movie of all time is some of the Rockies.
I mean, I even remember when I was a boxer, I boxed in high school, and that's how we are. I mean, that played all the time in the gym. I loved it. It was, and whenever you hear that song, you can't help but, punch in the air and run, and it's just, the Rocky franchise is so inspiring. I love the speech in Rocky Balboa. It's really moving, and I hope that I hope it keeps its legs and continues moving into the future.
Well, listen, Andrew, I got to cut the interview short here. I've appreciated the fact that you took time and put out to the fans exactly what you're trying to do. And I'm hoping this is going to inspire somebody out there to really want to pick this up and run with it and turn it into a movie. I hope the Creed movie does great. I hope Ivan Drago, the movie Drago, finally comes out, because I definitely will be watching it and buying it, because I have all the Rocky movies now. I plan on buying the Creed movie, and I would love to buy your Drago movie as well. So thanks again for coming on, and I hope that doing this interview with me, doing the interview with TotalRocky.com is going to help inspire somebody to definitely get in contact with you. And I hope Dolph Lundgren and Sylvester Stallone and Antonio Tarver and everybody comes together to help you get this on the screen.
Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate everything that you're doing, and I'm definitely following you on Twitter. If anybody wanted to check me out, it's Andrew LeMay. Andrew LeMay. It's LEMAY on Twitter, and they can probably find me through you, because I obviously follow you. So.
Well, I appreciate that.
Definitely, good stuff.
All right, and the truth has spoken.